Story 1. The Woman on US 93. I've pulled this rig through the Montana corridor countless times. Familiar enough to drive it blind. US 93 at 3 a.m. is like another planet. There's just the asphalt, the dark, the fence lines fading into nothing, the silhouette of a solitary water tower watching you glide past, and nothing else. That night in June 2021 was just another shift behind the wheel. Coffee in the thermos, cruise control set just under 65 mph. Everything was in its right place. The first strange thing was the unnerving emptiness. It was so empty I started counting the reflective posts to fight the monotony. And then I saw her. She was standing on the shoulder, waving both arms, stepping into the edge of my lane. Her hair was matted to her face by the wind. Even through the glare of the headlights, I could see her mouth moving. I eased off the throttle and hit the CB mic. Any cops on 93 near mile marker 145? Got a woman walking, waving down rigs, static, nothing. As I rolled closer, she bolted toward the passenger side of the truck, slamming on the door and screaming something I couldn't hear over the air brakes. She was young, maybe late 20s, no coat, no bag. Her fists pounded on the step bar. I cracked the window an inch. Please, he's coming back. He's going to take me again. Let me in, please. I didn't think. I flipped the lock and pulled the door handle. She scrambled up the steps and into the seat like she'd been running for miles. She was shaking violently, staring out the windshield rather than at me. I reached for the CB again, but caught movement in the mirror. A pickup, headlights off, grille glimmering just enough to be seen. It was coming fast. She saw it too and started screaming, clutching the dashboard. Go, go, don't let him block us. I shifted into gear and rolled out. The trailer groaned, the air brakes released in a rush. The pickup was still barreling, then it swerved wide and cut across our bow, still dark. Get down, I roared, tightening my grip on the wheel. I flashed my hazard lights once and leaned on the air horn. The pickup drifted sideways across my lane, inviting me to slam on the brakes. I didn't. I let the truck build speed on the slight incline. The engine roared, the trailer rattling. The pickup swerved again, but I held my lane. At the last second, it veered onto the shoulder, then dropped back. We didn't speak for a full minute, just watching the mirror. Finally, the headlights snapped on, and the pickup peeled off out of sight as if it had decided to wait for someone else. I took the next lighted exit at speed, tires howling as we entered the ramp. I pulled into a 24-hour service station, nose pointed out, high beams on. I grabbed my phone, 2 bars of service, and called 911. US 93 near mile marker 14-something, I told the dispatcher. A woman walking waved me down, saying someone was chasing her. The pickup tried to cut us off. He's out there somewhere. She said units were en route, still far off. Stay in the truck. If he approaches, do not engage. The woman was still trembling. She kept looking anxiously at the service road, flinching whenever a pair of headlights swept past. I gave her my water bottle, and after a few gulps, the words tumbled out. He picked me up outside Missoula, said he'd give me a ride to Spokane, but when I asked to be dropped off at a stop, he locked the doors. She paused, staring through the windshield as if unable to finish. I jumped out when he slowed on the shoulder. Thought I'd lost him, but he turned back. I told her we were safe, that the cops were coming, but she still gripped the dashboard like she was ready to jump again. I kept the truck idling, nose out, high beams on. 15 minutes later, the red and blue finally flashed across the lot. A county patrol car pulled in, followed by another. I stepped down slowly, hands visible, and recounted what happened. They took her statement first. An officer knelt by the passenger steps with his notepad ready. She repeated the same story. Rideshare, man wouldn't let her out, chased her when she ran. Another unit patrolled the service roads. The pickup was gone. Probably pulled into a farm turnoff, one officer said. Miles of dirt roads out here. Once they go dark, they vanish. They offered to take her to a shelter in Missoula. She quickly agreed, desperate to get into their vehicle. Before she went, she looked at me once, almost guiltily, and whispered, "Thank you for stopping." I nodded, unsure what to say. When the lot was quiet again, I walked around with my flashlight. Trailer ties were intact. Tires were fine, just a smear of dirt on the door handle where she'd clung climbing in. I didn't park there that night. I drove 2 more hours and pulled into a crowded truck stop. Curtains cracked an inch, keys in hand, lights nearby. A habit I never broke after that. Jack couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the dark, unlit headlights of the black pickup and the pale, wide-eyed face of the woman. He had done the right thing. He'd called 911, he'd protected her, but a cold feeling lingered. The next morning at the busy truck stop, he decided to clean the cabin. As he wiped down the passenger area where the girl had sat, he found a small object wedged between the leather seat cushion and the dashboard. It was a petal. Not a common wildflower. It was shriveled, dark crimson like dried blood, and oddly shaped, almost like a contoured stain. It didn't belong in Montana. It smelled of damp earth and metal. Jack picked it up. He was certain it hadn't been there before he stopped. The girl must have brought it with her, perhaps clinging to her clothes as she fled in the dark. He tossed it into the truck's trash bin, but a strange thought stopped him. He hadn't seen the girl carrying anything. No bag, no coat, not even a phone. Just a trembling body and torn jeans. He retrieved the petal from the bin and placed it in the storage compartment. The patrol officer's call a week later only deepened the gloom. "We filed the report," he said. "No matching pickup, no arrests. What about the girl?" Jack asked. "Is she okay at the Missoula shelter?" The officer was silent for a moment. "Sir, we couldn't identify her. She refused to give a real name at the service stop, and she never made it to the shelter. The officers offered to take her, but it seems she changed her mind and left before the patrol cars departed." Jack's heart skipped a beat. "No, you're wrong. I saw them, 2 cars. I saw her get into the police car." "No, sir. Both officers' accounts state, when they arrived, your truck was there. You stepped out, but no woman was found. She might have hitched another ride before they arrived, or perhaps due to shock you were mistaken." Jack hung up. She had vanished? But he remembered clearly. She was trembling, looking at him with a mix of gratitude and guilt, whispering, "Thank you for stopping," just before she climbed into the back of the patrol car. Both officers had witnessed it. He opened the storage compartment and took out the dark crimson dried petal. This time, as the dim light hit it, he saw a thin, almost shimmering layer of dust surrounding it. A month passed. Jack continued his runs. US 93. It had become an obsession. He no longer saw it as an empty corridor. He saw it as the place where a woman vanished and where he had been deceived by the stillness. While in Spokane, he saw an old newspaper. Under the local news section, there was a small article, "Missing Sarah Jenkins. Last seen near Missoula." The photo. It was her. The same girl. Tangled hair, wide eyes, gaunt face. The article read, "Sarah Jenkins, 28, went missing nearly a week prior from the Missoula area. She is believed to have been hitchhiking. Police found a discarded coat and a small handbag near mile marker 145, US 93. Mile marker 145. Exactly where Jack had stopped. His throat tightened. If she had gone missing a week before, then the woman he picked up that June night couldn't have been Sarah Jenkins. Or she was Sarah and she had been missing and dead all that time. He recalled her screaming, "Please, he's coming back. He's going to take me again. Not take me, but take me again." That night he dreamt he was driving. Snow was falling heavily, though it was August. His truck stopped. He saw the black pickup, but this time it had no lights. It was just a dense block of darkness reflecting no light. The man stepped out. He didn't look at Jack. He walked straight to the passenger side of the rig. He reached out not to open the door but to touch the metal, and as his hand connected, the metal melted like wax and the darkness was sucked into the cabin. Jack woke up in a cold sweat, his chest pounding. He looked into the storage compartment. The dried petal was still there, but it wasn't dry anymore. It was soft, almost damp, and its dark crimson seemed deeper, unnaturally luminous. Jack decided he had to go back, not for money, but for recompense. He drove to Missoula, then headed south on US 93. When he arrived at the 24-hour service station, everything was the same, but it felt brighter and emptier. He went straight to the counter and asked about the night officer. He wasn't on duty. A few days later, he found the number for Officer Miller, the one who responded to his 911 call. They met at a diner for lunch. Miller, a tired man with a thick mustache, recalled the event. "Oh, that. The truck driver guy. The chase. I told you nothing came of it. We saw you, your truck idling. But no woman. No pickup other than a farmer's truck heading home. I figured the girl hitched another ride as soon as you called." "No," Jack insisted, slamming his hand on the table. "I saw her get into your patrol car. You and your partner talked to her." Miller frowned. "Absolutely not. I swear on my uniform I never spoke to any woman that night. We only spoke to you. Asked what happened, and you were shaking like you were about to collapse. We told you to stay put until you calmed down." Miller pulled out an old incident report copy. "Here, look at my notes. Distressed trucker reporting a car chase and a hitchhiker. Area checked. No supporting evidence." Jack looked at the paper. Something more terrifying than a lie was happening. He had seen it with his own eyes. "What about the warning?" Jack asked. "The chase warning. She said he was going to take her again." Miller sighed. "Buddy, you're talking about the Sarah Jenkins disappearance. A poor girl who vanished somewhere off the trail. Body never found. A cold case. She disappeared before you called. Long before." Jack felt cold. He knew the girl he met was Sarah Jenkins, but if she was dead, what was she? A phantom? An echo? He returned to his truck. The dark crimson dried pedal was positioned there. This time it was resting right on the gear shift. He picked it up. It was hot as if it had been forged in embers. He realized it wasn't a pedal. It was a fragment of her, something that had clung to him when she leaped in. He recalled the girl's frantic run, her face matted with wind. She wasn't running from the man. She was running from the return. Jack continued driving, but now he wasn't driving alone. Every time he turned onto US 93, the familiar emptiness turned into a lurking horror. And then it returned. 17 a.m. In the middle of nowhere, no moon, no streetlights. In the right side mirror, there was a faint, metallic reflection. The black pickup. This time, its headlights were on. But the most terrifying thing was how it drove. It didn't try to pass. It maintained an exact 30-meter distance behind Jack's rig, never changing speed. It wasn't running. It was observing. Jack hit the gas. 65 mph. 70. 75. The black pickup maintained the 30-meter gap perfectly. He picked up the CB. "Any driver southbound on 93 near mile marker 120? I've got a pickup tailing me, silent engine, but lights on. No static, just silence." The CB waves had been blocked. Jack looked into the left mirror. The black pickup's window rolled down, and this time he clearly saw the driver. It wasn't a person. It was a dense black silhouette, formless, but in the position of the face, something reflected Jack's light, two white luminous spots like two large empty pupils. And craving. The dark crimson pedal on Jack's dashboard began to vibrate. Jack screamed, and he slammed on the emergency brake. The rig screamed, the tires tearing up the asphalt. Jack hoped the pickup behind him would crash into him, causing an accident, a reason for intervention. The black pickup stopped, exactly 30 meters. It didn't skid, there was no sound of brakes. It simply ceased as if not bound by inertia. And then, it began to back up. Very slowly. Jack released the brake and drove on, his heart hammering. The situation dragged on. The black pickup became a frequent companion on US 93. It always appeared at 3 a.m., always 30 meters away, always with two cold white spots where the driver's eyes should be. One night, Jack decided to confront it. He was ready. He pulled the truck into a wide pull-off near an abandoned restaurant. He turned off the engine and waited. The black pickup appeared, slowly approached, and stopped at the ghostly 30-meter distance. Jack stepped out of the truck, carrying a large flashlight. He started walking toward the pickup. "What do you want?" Jack growled into the silent night. "You want her? She's not here. She's gone." He walked closer. 20 meters. 10 meters. His heart pounded so hard he thought it would break his ribs. The flashlight beam hit the pickup. It wasn't just a pickup. It was old, rusty, and looked like it was made of shadows. He saw the driver, the black shape, the two white spots. And then a voice echoed in Jack's mind, not through his ears, but through his skull. It was dry and deep like cracking earth. Not her. It is. What she left behind. Jack looked down at his hand. He had forgotten. He was still holding the dark crimson petal. It was scorching hot, almost burning in his palm. He turned back to his truck. He remembered Sarah's whisper. "Please, he's coming back. He's going to take me again." Sarah Jenkins died when she jumped out of that pickup. But her fear, her desperation, and a physical fragment of her, the petal, which clung to her from the spot where she fell, had jumped into Jack's cab. The man in the pickup wasn't a kidnapper. He was a type of collector, one who wouldn't allow anything belonging to his domain to be taken away. Sarah was dead, and he was hunting for the evidence of her temporary survival in Jack's truck. Jack stepped back into the driver's seat. He looked in the rearview mirror. The shadow driver was leaving the truck, stepping out slowly. It wasn't a normal gait. It was a float. Jack shifted into gear and sped away. He knew he couldn't escape. He drove straight toward mile marker 145. The dark, crimson petal was throbbing in his hand. He stopped right on the shoulder, exactly where Sarah had stood. The black pickup was immediately behind him. This time it stopped right next to his trailer. Jack could feel the cold temperature radiating from it. The man's shadow was standing by his truck door. It was pounding on the step bar exactly where Sarah had pounded. Jack rolled down the window. The shadow said nothing. It just extended a hand, a long, gaunt, black and nailless hand. It just waited. Jack looked at the petal. He understood that the petal was the link between him and Sarah's spirit. It was what had kept her here, and what had brought the shadow to him. He opened his palm and released the petal. The petal fell onto the asphalt. The moment it touched, a cold, foul gust of wind passed through the cabin. There was no scream, only a deep gasp, as if someone had just regained their last breath. The petal vanished. It wasn't blown away, it just melted into the asphalt. The black shadow stood still for a moment. Then it turned back to the pickup. It closed the door. There was no engine sound, no tire screech. The black pickup simply turned, off its lights, and then that block of darkness slowly faded into the night like black ink dissolving in water. US 93 returned to being itself, empty, silent, and only asphalt. Jack never stopped on US 93 again. He changed his route. He sold the truck. He no longer drove long haul. But every time he passes any empty road at night, he sees a dark crimson, dried petal in his mind, and he hears a whisper. Thank you for stopping. He had saved a dead woman, and he had nearly paid with his soul to keep a small physical fragment of a tragedy. Story 2. The Trap on the Loneliest Road. They don't call US Route 50 the loneliest road in America as a joke. This stretch through Nevada feels like driving across the earth's bare bones. 2 lanes pinched between nothingness, endless sagebrush, flat mountains cut out on the horizon. I was driving it in July 2017, from Ely to Fallon, a standard night run. Dry goods, light load, nothing exciting. My electronic logging device, ELD, was nearing its time limit, but I figured I'd catch some shut-eye at the next depot. The night held the desert's peculiar stillness. The moonlight was bright enough to turn the sagebrush into black and white shadows, the mountains into distant cardboard cutouts, and the radio was silent. I remember thinking, a great night for an easy drive, and that's when I noticed the shape ahead. From about a mile away, it looked like a dark mass blocking my lane. Wrong, askew. As I got closer, it resolved into a sedan parked perpendicular to the road. No warning flashers, no hood up. The driver's side door was just slightly ajar. I eased off the accelerator, tapped the Jake brake, and then cut it off. No need to announce my presence, more than 40 tons of steel already did. I coasted, scanning the shoulders. Something moved in the sagebrush, low quick like heads ducking down. Then another shape on the opposite side. That was the moment my blood turned to ice. This wasn't a breakdown. This was a trap. Truckers have an unwritten code. One rule: don't willingly walk into a problem someone else set up. Not on a desolate highway with no cell service and no witnesses. You don't step out unless you know what you're stepping into. I had seconds to decide. The shoulder was too steep. Stop and back up. A recipe for jackknifing the trailer and dumping it into the ditch. There was only one option, swing left. Drive through. I downshifted, centered my rig, and laid on the air horn. A long, deafening shriek. My bumper struck the sedan broadside. The car jerked violently, tires screeching as it slid sideways. Gravel sprayed beneath my chassis. From the sagebrush, the two figures darted out, scattering toward the rear, not the front. That told me what I needed. They weren't desperate, just opportunistic. The sedan rolled just enough to give me a gap. The trailer shuddered but held. I kept the wheel steady, no swerving. I just kept pushing forward. As the tail of the trailer cleared, I finally exhaled. The road stretched open again. The desert was silent, as if nothing had happened. I checked my mirrors. The sedan was listing awkwardly in the shadows. No lights came on. Nothing followed. I held 55 mph, eyes glued to every turnout like it was a hungry, open mouth. My planned sleep vanished. I drove past my legal hours until the horizon turned blue. The truck stop outside Fallon looked like heaven. Fluorescent lights buzzed. Other rigs lined up like guardians. I parked facing out, shut down the engine, my hand still white-knuckled on the wheel. When I finally did my walk-around inspection, I found a smear of paint, not mine, a long, low streak across my bumper. Inside, I used the payphone and called the highway patrol. The officer said I wasn't the first to report a roadblock there. Could be theft, could be worse, he said. His voice sounded more weary than concerned. After the call, I started hearing whispers from other drivers. An old-timer named Old Hung had disappeared a month ago, right near that mile marker. They said his truck was found, but he wasn't. Hung was known for seeking the absolute solitude of the desert. 2 nights later, I found myself back on Route 50, heading the opposite direction this time, hauling a load from Reno east. I couldn't avoid it. Fear and curiosity were an ugly mix. I stopped at a small diner in Middlegate and asked about Old Hung. An elderly waitress looked at me with tired eyes, as if she'd seen too many people ask about things best left alone. The loneliest road doesn't take your belongings. It takes your sound, she said, her voice raspy. Old Hung was obsessed with the desert's silence. He called it the sound of emptiness. He stopped out there, and the silence took him. She turned away but whispered an addendum, "Don't make a sound. Don't stop." I remembered the moment I hit the sedan, the terrible stillness after the deafening air horn blast. It wasn't the natural quiet of the desert. It was the cancellation of sound, a physical void. As dusk settled, my resolve hardened. I had to see. I prepared meticulously. I taped shut the cabin crevices, brought a flare gun and an old digital sound meter to measure noise. When I drove out of Eureka, the night sky was so dark it swallowed the stars whole, as if the cosmos had retreated and abandoned me. I reached the mile marker. This time there was no sedan, just the open road. But something was wrong. My cab should have been vibrating with the howl of the tires and the rush of the wind. Nothing. My ears were ringing, not from pressure, but from lack. It was the unnatural silence the waitress had mentioned. I glanced at the ELD. The screen was black. The radio was dead. My phone, plugged into the charger, showed no service, but the GPS icon was still there, static. I was at the exact coordinates. My electronics were suppressed, but only the communication parts. Then I saw it. About a mile ahead, an old, heavy Freightliner pulled over on the shoulder, hazard lights flashing. It matched the description of Hung's rig I'd heard. My heart hammered. Hung? Alive? Or a new trap? I slowed down, keeping my engine at the lowest possible rumble. As I got closer, there was something wrong with the light. The hazard lights weren't flashing but flickering erratically, like a short circuit, not a cycle. It was too regular, too perfect. I stopped about 100 yards away. I couldn't stand the silence. It strangled thought. It turned fear into a dull terror, as if I myself were dissolving. I grabbed the flare gun. Rolling the window down slightly, I tossed the old sound meter out where it hit the pavement, then fired a flare toward the sky. The flare detonated. It was loud, but I only saw the light. The sound, the sharp crack, the hiss, was sucked into a black void. It was like watching a muted action movie. The sound meter lay on the ground, its recording light flashing. It was logging something, but no audio reached my ears. I looked at the Freightliner. It didn't move. No shadows darted from the brush. But as I scrutinized it, I noticed details on the truck were erased. No rust, no road grime, no license plate. It was a perfect image of a truck, an optical illusion generated by some force to compel me to stop and step out. And then I saw the shapes. They weren't in the sagebrush. They were standing upright, 3 figures farther away, just outside the boundary of the silence. 2 of them looked like ordinary men dressed in dark clothing. The third in the middle wore an old welder's overall, standing taller, seemingly holding a small device. He raised his hand, and something flashed on his wrist. Immediately, I felt immense pressure in my ears and the silence shattered. Sound crashed in like a tsunami. My truck engine roared painfully. The discarded sound meter on the ground began emitting a high-pitched, horrifying shriek, and most importantly, I heard a faint, drawn-out moan coming from the direction of the phantom truck. I realized what created the silence. A device using ultra-low frequencies to nullify all sound, and perhaps to scramble human nervous systems. Their goal wasn't theft. The goal was to disorient you, to shut you down, making you a perfect container in absolute silence. The man in the overalls was trying to reactivate the device. I didn't think twice. I dropped the rig into gear, released the brakes, and floored the accelerator. I drove straight without swerving. As I passed the location of the phantom freightliner, I glanced over. It was just shimmering air. But just past that, right on the shoulder, I saw a carefully camouflaged object. A low steel pole, just taller than the sagebrush, with a small, slowly rotating loop antenna. It was adorned with a rotting wooden cross, making it look like a harmless roadside memorial. I slammed the accelerator harder. The truck shook as if stuck in mud, fighting a magnetic or frequency field. In the rearview mirror, I saw one of the figures lunging toward the cross. He seemed to trip, an unnatural stumble, as if his leg was caught on something invisible. And then I realized the most terrifying part. As I sped past the edge of the silence for a split second, I saw the shapes from the sagebrush the first time, the low, crouching heads like jackals. But this time, in my taillights, I saw clearly. They weren't crouching robbers, they were dragged bodies. They were tethered to the ankles of the standing figures by thin cables, which had been activated by the silence. It was Old Hung and another victim. They used the husks of their victims as bait. When I rammed the sedan the first time, I must have snapped a cable and dropped the lure. The predators had to run and retrieve their puppets. I shot out of the influence zone. Sound rushed back, and I never knew the roar of a truck engine could be something so beautiful. I never went back to Route 50. I put in my notice 2 days later. What I saw wasn't criminal. It was an organized form of predation, exploiting the very physics and psychology of loneliness. Route 50 isn't lonely because it's empty. It's empty because what is out there has learned how to make it silent so no one hears when it starts to hunt. And that silence is what I can never shake from my mind.